Kid, when exactly are you going to sleep with her? The old man asked. He was half lying on the bed, kicking me with total disgust. He complained about me crowding his space every single night. I told him he was my shield. If trouble ever came looking for that woman, I was going to hide behind him. He just snorted and picked his nose. He called me a coward for being scared of a girl. I had made up some excuse about still developing and needing to wait until I was 18. That meant 2 more years of sharing a bed with this smelly old ghost. I told him I'd build another room tomorrow just to get away from him. He laughed, a greasy, knowing sound. He told me that once the red spots on her face cleared up, she would be a legendary beauty. He was over 100 years old and claimed he had never seen a woman that stunning. He said I would be thanking him later. He even joked that if she tried to kill us once she regained her memory, he could run faster than me. I was on my own. Bai Xiaozue was a vision, even in rough, white cloth. She had this noble, cold aura that made me feel inferior just standing near her. Then, she picked up a meat cleaver. The aura vanished instantly. She chased a chicken around the yard 3 times, causing total chaos. Feathers flew everywhere. The dog barked like crazy. She finally caught the bird and sliced its throat, but the damn thing wouldn't die. It flopped around the yard, spraying blood on everything. Her temper flared. She grabbed a 3-meter-long wooden pole and swung it like she was splitting a mountain. She missed the chicken, shattered a basin, and snapped the pole in half. When she reached for a shovel, I jumped in. I told her to go wash clothes and let me handle the rest. She looked at her white dress, nodded, and gave the half-dead chicken a murderous glare before walking away. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The old man watched from his chair, sipping wine and mocking me for being a doting husband. I just looked at the suffering bird and sighed. I snapped my fingers, and Hutaling, my scruffy dog, lunged in. 1 bite, and the chicken's misery was over. Even the dog was terrified of Xiaozue. He had been hiding in the woodpile until she went inside. The old man commented that the dog was ugly and acted more like a wolf cub than a pet. I told him the dog had more class than he did. We bickered back and forth until Hutaling suddenly stood up. He growled at the distance, his fur standing on end. I dropped the chicken. The dog's instincts were never wrong. A group of riders thundered toward our gate along the riverbank. They weren't soldiers. They were armed to the teeth with mismatched blades and spears. The leader was a bald man with 1 eye, carrying a wicked-looking trident. He looked down at me from his horse and barked at me to get over there. I played the part of the humble fisherman. I pushed open the gate and bowed. I told him it was just me, an old man, and my wife living here. He ordered us to make food. I invited them in, acting like a terrified, obedient host. I told them I had just killed a chicken and would stew it for them. The leader laughed, thinking I was just a pushover. Then he demanded to see my wife. I tried to protest, saying it wasn't proper, but he lashed his whip across my shoulder. I had to play the role. I called for Xiaozue to come out. Xiaozue walked out of the house. For a second, the men were stunned by her height and her long, flowing hair. But as she got closer, the leader's face twisted in disgust. He saw the red spots on her face and cursed. He called her an ugly brat and realized she wasn't the pretty lady they were hunting. 1 fat bandit with a heavy axe spat on the ground, mocking my choice in women. I just smiled weakly, saying a poor fisherman couldn't afford anyone better. The fat bandit looked at his leader and confirmed she wasn't the one. But the leader's eyes turned cold. Kill them anyway, he said. He wanted to kill 10,000 innocents rather than let 1 target escape. The fat bandit laughed and raised his axe. He told me he was a water pirate and that he'd make my death quick if I behaved. My legs started shaking. I collapsed onto the ground, wailing and begging for my life. The bandits burst into laughter. One of them looked at me, a cruel smirk on his face. He asked if I'd wet my pants yet. He bragged that they'd already slaughtered over 20 people today who looked exactly like me. Then he leaned in. He told me if the food was good, he might consider sparing my life. But my wife? That was a different story. Xiaozue turned to look at him, her eyes burning with a cold fury I hadn't seen before. She looked at me and told me to get up. She said a man should die with dignity, not groveling on the ground like a coward. The leader, a bald man with a trident, looked surprised. He watched as she pulled me to my feet. She looked the bandits in the eye and told them that if they wanted to kill someone, they should kill her. She asked why I was so afraid. I played my part, trembling and stammering. I called her wife and acted like I couldn't find my words. She ignored my act. She asked them why. If they were just pirates looking for money, they felt the need to take lives. The fat bandit with the axe laughed. He said they did whatever they wanted. Today was a good day, and he just felt like killing a few people for fun. The others roared with laughter. They said since we didn't have any money, they'd just have to take our lives instead. Xiao Zui patted the dust off my clothes. She looked at the bald leader and reminded him that they had promised to spare my life if the service was good. The leader grinned. He said he was a man of his word. If I served a good meal, I could live. But she was definitely going to die. Xiao Zui didn't flinch. She just asked for enough time to cook the meal and say goodbye to her husband. The leader tapped his trident against his palm, studying her. He noted that she had a lot of courage for a simple fisherman's wife. I quickly jumped in, putting on a pathetic, tearful face. I told him we were just law-abiding people and that she'd been married to me since she was 9. Suddenly, old Kai came running out of the house, wailing. He was holding a small booklet high in the air. He begged for mercy, shouting that we were registered citizens who had never offended anyone. I was stunned. Where did he get a household registry? The fat bandit kicked old Kai to the ground and snatched the booklet. He flipped through it and nodded to the leader. It was official. The leader gave a slight nod. The fat bandit sneered at us. He told us to stop talking and get the food ready. If they were happy, they might let us live. If not, we'd just be 3 more ghosts added to the 12 they'd already killed today. I shook with fear and told them we had some high-quality wine hidden away. I scrambled toward the house to get it while old Kai led Xiao Zui away to start the cooking. Outside, the fat bandit sat next to his leader. He sounded worried. He asked what the big boss was really trying to achieve by killing so many people. The leader's eyes turned cold. He told him to stop asking questions if he wanted to stay alive. They just needed to follow orders. The fat bandit sighed. He mentioned that the prefect of Hetsan County had already sent 2,000 soldiers to hunt them down. If they got caught, it would be the end. The leader snapped that he knew the risks, but disobeying the big boss meant dying today anyway. I chose that moment to run back out, clutching a large gourd. I had a fawning, pathetic smile on my face. I told them the wine was here. The fat bandit looked at the single gourd and got angry. He asked who I thought I was kidding with such a small amount. I just smiled. I told him it was enough. It was a very strong, very special wine. I told them they should drink up before they set off on their journey. The bandit didn't like the phrasing, but I just bowed and scraped. I told him I was bad with words. What I meant to say was that they should just hurry up and die after drinking. His face twisted in rage, but before he could speak, I pulled the cork. A blinding white light exploded from the mouth of the gourd. Hundreds of silver streaks shot out, dancing through the courtyard like lethal snakes. Before the bandits could even scream, they were shredded into piles of meat. In an instant, the quiet yard had become a slaughterhouse. Xiao Zui and old Kai stood frozen by the kitchen. I stood in the middle of the carnage, calm and indifferent, a far cry from the coward I'd been seconds ago. Old Kai dropped his knife and ran over, gagging at the sight. He panicked, asking what we were going to do now. I calmly recapped the gourd. I felt a bit bad about wasting such a good tool. Xiao Zui walked over. She didn't look disgusted. She looked curious. She asked me where the gourd came from. I lied and told her an old Taoist priest gave it to me in exchange for some wine. Old Kai started screaming at me, saying I'd caused a massive disaster and we needed to figure out how to clean this up. I just shrugged. I told him we'd do what we always do, run away. Old Kai cursed his luck. He complained that we'd only been settled here for a year and now he had to go on the run again. He called me a heartless brat. Xiao Zui watched us bickering. She seemed to realize that neither of us was acting like a normal person who had just committed a massacre. These weren't just random thugs. They were part of something bigger. Even if we cleaned up the bodies, someone would come looking. It was time to move on. Old Kai sighed, his shoulders slumping. He told me to go pack. Xiao Zui grabbed a torch and started setting the place on fire to cover our tracks. I was impressed. She was tougher than she looked. Old Kai just kept grumbling about how we were all cut from the same cloth. Suddenly, a sharp cry pierced the air. A messenger eagle took flight from a nearby tree and vanished into the sky. My heart sank. We were exposed. We had to leave immediately. As the flames consumed our home, old Kai sighed again. I asked if he was sad about the house. He shook his head. He was just upset because the neighbor had caught a deer and he was going to miss out on the roasted venison. Old Kai brought out 2 horses. He told us the river was too dangerous now, so we'd travel by land. He told me and Xiaotsue to take the horses and meet him at a predetermined spot later. Xiaotsue was confused. She asked if he wasn't coming with us. I told her not to worry. This was his routine. Whenever things got dangerous, he'd split off on his own. He claimed it gave us a better chance of escaping, but I knew the truth. The old man just didn't want to get dragged down by my trouble. Old Kai claimed that splitting up was for our own safety. He said if one group got caught, the other could stage a rescue. I just rolled my eyes. I didn't believe a word of it. The old man was a slippery fox, and I knew he just wanted to minimize his own risk. I told him we were leaving and that we'd meet him at Qingyan Mountain. Old Kai froze. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing. He asked me where I was going again, as if he hadn't heard me right. I told him it had been a long time since I'd been there, and it was time for a visit. He looked thoughtful, but I didn't give him a chance to pry. I turned to Xiaotsue. I told her the journey to Qingyan Mountain was over 1,000 miles and apologized for the hardship ahead. She didn't even look at me. Her eyes were fixed on the horses. She gave me a distracted answer about following her husband wherever he went, then paused. She asked if she even knew how to ride a horse. That caught me off guard. I didn't know either. If I guessed wrong, how would I explain it? Before I could say a word, she proved my worries were useless. She flipped herself onto the saddle with perfect grace. She grabbed the reins, tested the horse's pace for a moment, and then suddenly took off. She vanished 100 meters down the path in a blur of speed, executed a flawless turn, and came galloping back. She pulled the reins, making the horse rear up on its hind legs. She looked incredible. She muttered to herself that since we were always running away, she must have learned it at some point. An hour after we left, our little courtyard was nothing but smoldering ash. 20 riders surrounded the ruins. A woman with twin crescent blades strapped to her back and dozens of small braids in her hair rode up to a leader dressed in tight black clothing. She reported that the house belonged to an old man and a youth, but a new woman had recently joined them. The report said the woman had a red birthmark and was hideously ugly, though her height and build matched the portrait they were carrying. The leader's face remained ice-cold. She didn't care about the details. They had lost too many good men today. It was a blood feud now. She ordered everyone to track us down and kill us on sight. No prisoners. Meanwhile, Xiaotsue and I were camped out. She stared at me across the campfire, her gaze sharp and cold. She asked me why I said we were always running away. I felt a cold sweat break out. That was a hard question to answer. I flipped the rabbit I was roasting and took a deep breath. I decided to be honest. I told her the truth. She wasn't my wife. I had found her drowning in the river and saved her. The old man had just been making things up. I told her she was free to leave whenever she wanted. She didn't even blink. She said she already knew. I was stunned. She looked at me calmly and told me that while she had lost her memory, she wasn't an idiot. I asked her why she hadn't said anything or why she had played along with our little act. She simply said she didn't know where she came from and had nowhere else to go. To her, the world was simple. I stared at her, realized she was right. People are the ones who make things complicated. I asked her what she wanted to do next. She said we'd run together. I warned her that staying with me would only bring her trouble, but she pointed out that I'd mentioned bandits targeting young women at the river earlier. It was just as likely that she was the one bringing trouble to me. I had to admire her logic. She was sharp and direct. I asked her what I should call her from now on. She gave me a look like I was a complete moron. She asked why wife or Xiaotsue wouldn't work. I had no comeback for that. If she didn't care, why should I? I told her if she ever remembered who she was, she could leave. She just shrugged and said we'd deal with the future when it arrived. I smiled and handed her a roasted rabbit leg. I told her to eat up. My cooking was the one thing I could truly brag about, even out here in the wild. I passed her my flask, warning her to go easy on the wine because we were running low. Back at the Linjiang Pavilion, Xiaohe burst into the room, her face pale. She found Pei Yunjin tending to an orchid. Pei Yunjin frowned, telling the girl to stop being so frantic. But Xiaohe couldn't calm down. She gasped out that the young master, meaning me, was in big trouble. Pei Yunjin dropped her watering can immediately. Her relaxed posture vanished. Xiaohe explained that some fierce-looking men with blades had come looking for me. She had tried to play it cool, saying I was just a fishmonger, but the men claimed I had killed over a dozen of their brothers and fled. They threatened to wash the Linjiang pavilion in blood if anyone hid me. Pei Yunjin was shocked. She couldn't believe I was a killer. To her, I was just a man who didn't know a lick of martial arts. How could I kill a dozen men? Xiaohe warned her that the men looking for me were high-level experts and that I was in extreme danger. Pei Yunjin stood up, her eyes flashing with a cold, lethal light. The lazy, elegant woman was gone, replaced by someone terrifying. She called for her top guards and elders. Xiaohe was startled, asking if she really intended to interfere. Pei Yunjin didn't hesitate. She said I had done her a great favor, and she wouldn't stand by while anyone touched me. She mocked the idea of bandits threatening her pavilion. She wanted to see who in the 8,000 miles of the Kanglan River had the guts to try. Far away, Xiao Tsue was annoyed. She asked why we had let the horses go if we were supposed to be escaping. I just grinned. There are different ways to run. I wanted the pursuers to play with the horses for a while. We stood on a high cliff, watching the two horses gallop away into the distance, driven by a trick I'd used to spook them. We lay low in the thick brush on the cliffside. An hour later, a group of riders thundered past the base of the cliff, chasing the hoof prints. Once they were gone, I stood up and stretched. Xiao Tsue asked what the next move was. I told her we were going back. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Why go back to the most dangerous place? I explained that the most dangerous place is often the safest. I had dug a hidden cellar under the hut before the fire, packed with food and good wine. It would be a waste to leave it. We could hide out there in peace for a few days while everyone searched the roads. Xiao Tsue looked thoughtful. She told me I was very smart. I didn't let it go to my head. Back where I came from, these were basic tricks. To me, the people in this world were amateurs when it came to schemes. If I brought out some real military strategy books from my world, I'd probably drive them all insane. I thought about old Kai. His real name was Sun Daotong, and wondered where that old geezer had disappeared to. I just shook my head and started leading the way back home. Old Kai was a 1,000-year-old fox, a slippery veteran of the world. He was full of more schemes than I could count. I knew he could handle half of my tricks easily, so I wasn't worried about him. He knew exactly what he was doing. Bai Xiao Tsue watched me, her eyes filled with a strange curiosity. She couldn't quite figure us out, this old man and young boy duo, but she clearly found the whole situation entertaining. Just as I predicted, another group of riders thundered past our hiding spot shortly after. There were quite a few of them this time. We stayed put until the sun dipped below the horizon, and since no one else passed by, I decided it was time to move. I called out to Bai Xiao Tsue, and we headed back. We didn't even bother hiding. Walking through the cool early autumn night breeze, we actually felt quite relaxed. Bai Xiao Tsue had tried to imagine what my hidden cellar looked like, but she was stunned when we arrived. She hadn't expected it to be so comfortable. I had designed the underground space as a 3-room suite. The walls were plastered white, making the rooms look clean and bright. It was fully furnished with tables, chairs, tea sets, and wine glasses. I even had bookshelves filled with scrolls, 2 comfortable lounge chairs, and a stock of salted fish and smoked meat. One room even held fresh vegetables and several large jars of wine lined up against the wall. I'd even set up a pot-throwing game and some darts for entertainment. The most impressive part was the ventilation. I don't know how I managed the design, but the air inside was fresh, without a hint of the stuffiness you'd expect from a hole in the ground. You call this a cellar? Bai Xiao Tsue asked, walking through the 3 rooms. She couldn't understand why I'd spent so much time on this place instead of making the hut above ground more comfortable. It's just a cellar, I replied with a shrug. The conditions are a bit simple, but we won't be here long anyway. Just make do for now. I'm going to take a bath first. Bai Xiao Tsue was speechless. She had already spotted the small indoor pool in one of the rooms. When I finished my bath and came out, I found her fiddling with one of the lounge chairs. I grinned. That thing is comfortable. Give it a try. I did, she said. It's good for old people. You shouldn't be this lazy at your age. I just laughed. I believe in maximum comfort. Why stand when you can sit? Why sit when you can lie down? We don't know what tomorrow brings, so I'm going to enjoy every second I can. Second, Bai Xiaozue looked confused. She didn't recognize the word. Oh, I explained patiently. It's a measurement of time. Imagine one 2-hour period divided into 120 parts. I call each part a minute. Then, divide 1 minute into 60 parts. That tiny bit of time is a second. She thought about it for a moment. It sounded incredibly short. It only reinforced her opinion that I was far too lazy, wanting to optimize even the tiniest fleeting moment for relaxation. But then she grew curious. How could anyone possibly measure something as short as a finger snap? I hadn't expected her to be so interested. I reached onto a shelf and pulled out a necklace with a walnut-sized circular pendant. I opened the cover. Look, I hired many craftsmen and spent a year making this. The precision isn't perfect, but it works. It's much better than the vague way people usually track time here. Inside the cover was a strange dial with evenly spaced markings around the edge. In the center, 3 needles of different lengths and thicknesses were fixed to a single point. How do you use it? She asked. Simple. See this knob? You turn it until it tightens, and then the needles start moving. The shortest, thickest one is the hour hand. One full rotation is 6 2-hour periods, exactly half a day. 2 rotations make a full day and night. To make it easier, I divided each 2-hour block into large segments. As I explained the mechanics, Bai Xiaozue's eyes began to shine with a strange light. This was a treasure, a device for precise timekeeping. She looked at me, lounging in my pajamas on the rocking chair, and seemed genuinely amazed by the ingenuity. If this invention got out, it would change how the entire world measured time. It was hard for her to reconcile such a brilliant device with the lazy teenager sitting in front of her. But then she remembered my motto, he who wins over the lazy shall win the world, and it actually started to make sense. She played with the device for a long time, unwilling to put it down. I decided to tease her a bit. That's called a pocket watch. I only made 2. I was planning to give one to my future wife as an engagement gift, since I don't have many valuable things. Bai Xiaozue's long eyebrows twitched. Without a word, she hung the necklace around her own neck. I froze. Hey, you that's. She gave me a cold look. For now, I am still your wife. But it's not real, I said, feeling a bit of heartache over the loss of my gadget. She ignored me, tucking it away. I'll give it back when I regain my memory. I sighed. I'd only known her a few days, and she'd already learned how to keep what she grabbed. She reminded me of a stray dog that never lets go of a bone. A little later, I found her struggling with a wooden cube about the size of a fist. It had 6 sides, each made of 9 small squares with different patterns carved into them. The goal was simple: scramble it, and then return each side to its original pattern. It was a Rubik's Cube, a test of logic and patience. She had never seen such ingenious toys in the hut before. I called her for dinner 3 times, but she wouldn't budge. It's called a magic cube, I said, eating my own meal. There's a trick to it. You have to calculate the moves. It's fascinating, she said, finally putting the cube down and joining me at the table. She poured herself some wine. Jiang Fan. Even though I lost my memory, I have no recollection of the things you use. They aren't from the ordinary world. The watch, the cube, even your tables and stoves, they aren't common. I'm starting to get curious about where you really come from. I raised my glass to her. It's better if we don't know too much. We'll go our separate ways eventually. No knowledge, no debts. Her chopsticks paused for a second, but she didn't say anything. She just kept eating. Just don't forget to give me back the watch, I added with my mouth full of rice. We didn't stay in that comfortable cellar for long. After 3 days, I decided it was time to leave. I burned everything except for a few items Bai Xiaozue insisted on taking and 2 jars of wine. She still couldn't understand my logic, especially when I let her ride out into the open to catch a boat going upstream. We traveled about 50 miles against the current to a small pier, where we boarded a passenger ship heading west. Not only were we going the wrong way, but we were doing it in plain sight. Sitting in a corner of the boat, Bai Xiaozue reached up to scratch her face. I quickly grabbed her wrist. Don't touch it. It took forever to get that right. It's uncomfortable, she muttered. She currently looked like a middle-aged man with a ruddy face and a thick beard. Of course it's uncomfortable, I whispered. It's basically glue. Just get used to it, and whatever you do, don't wash your face. She suppressed the urge to scratch, her mouth twitching. Jiang, nephew, we are going the wrong way. I looked like a tanned, dark-faced youth in common clothes. My features were completely transformed. She had been amazed when I used pigments and brushes to make her eyes look larger and turn my straight nose into a bulbous one. Our cover was that of an uncle and nephew traveling to the upstream pier for manual labor. We're going the wrong way, but don't worry, I said with a dark-faced, white-toothed grin. This is just the beginning. Later, we're going to head north. Bai Xiaozue was completely bewildered. Qingyan Mountain was to the east. We were going west, then north. It made no sense. Exactly, I whispered. If even you are confused by my plan, the pursuers won't have a clue where we are. She looked at my smug face and looked like she wanted to punch me. But I could tell she was starting to enjoy the chaos. I actually started to feel a little sorry for the people chasing us. Trying to track me down was going to be a nightmare for them. While Bai Xiaozue and I were whispering, the boat suddenly erupted into chaos. 8 or 9 men appeared out of nowhere, drawing weapons and shouting at the crowd. A massive guy, built like a bear, stepped forward. He brandished a steel saber with a menacing look. GGG Gold. SS Silver, he roared, his voice thick with a stutter. CC Copper Coins. JJ Jewelry. HH handed over to me. I almost spat. The scene felt ridiculously familiar. Panic took over the deck. The bandits started shoving and hitting people with the flats of their blades. Screams and cries filled the air. Everyone shut up, a voice barked. Whoever makes another sound loses their tongue. A handsome young man with sharp, flirtatious eyes stepped forward. He looked annoyed by the noise. He drew a short, gleaming blade and tapped it rhythmically against the wooden railing of the ship. I watched them, my eyes practically glowing with interest. Were we really being hijacked? Within minutes, all 60 passengers were herded onto the deck. Under my silent signal, Bai Xiaozue acted the part. She followed the crowd and crouched down obediently. The ship's captain came stumbling forward, throwing himself at the big man's feet. "Masters, please. Take whatever you want. Just spare our lives," the captain begged, his head hitting the deck over and over. The big man kicked him aside like a piece of trash. "SS, stay quiet. I'll tell you what to do." The captain trembled, not daring to say another word. The big man seemed to realize his stutter was ruining his intimidating aura. He glanced at the handsome youth. You tell them," he muttered. The young man with the peach blossom eyes leaned against his blade and cleared his throat. Before he could speak, a little girl burst into tears, wailing for her mother. One of the bandits grew furious and raised his sword, but Peach Eyes stopped him with a wave of his hand. "Step aside," he said. "I'll handle it." He walked over to the little girl with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The mother shrieked, pulling the child into her arms while shaking uncontrollably. "Please, master. She's just a child. She doesn't know any better." Peach Eyes ignored her. He reached into his robe and pulled out a piece of candy. "Hey, little girl. You want this?" The girl peeked out from her mother's arms, her eyes fixed on the sweet treat. Peach Eyes gave a dark grin. "I'll give you the candy, but you have to stop crying. If you don't, I'll throw you overboard to feed the fish." The girl's eyes went wide. Then, she let out a scream and cried 10 times harder than before. Peach Eyes winced. He tossed the candy onto the girl's lap and turned to the mother. "If you don't want to die, keep her mouth shut." I bit my lip to keep from laughing. This guy was actually kind of funny. "All right, listen up," Peach Eyes shouted, pointing at the big man. "Do you know who this is? This is the famous boss Xiong, the Black Mountain Old Skin. We're just passing through and need a little travel money." Black Mountain Old Skin? I looked at the guy's dark, hairy chest and massive frame. The name was actually pretty accurate, even if it sounded like a cheap knockoff of a demon lord. "We only want money, not lives," Peach Eyes continued. "Give up half of what you have, and you'll be safe. If you don't..." He suddenly drew his blade and sliced through a thick wooden beam in one clean motion. The wood fell apart perfectly. "That will be you." I was genuinely impressed. Only half. These bandits were surprisingly reasonable. "That young man's blade work is good," Bai Xiaozue whispered beside me. I nodded. The strike had been lightning fast. Even a layman could see he was a professional. The other bandits started moving through the crowd with a patched-up cloth bag. They were being weirdly disciplined about it. They took half of what people offered and gave the rest back. They didn't even bother searching anyone. Their lack of professionalism was so bad I almost wanted to give them a lesson on how to properly rob a boat. Soon, they reached us. "Hey you, Redface and the dark kid," a bandit barked. "Hand over your silver. Don't try to hide anything, or my blade won't be so kind." I let my eyes wander for a second before putting on a submissive, fawning smile. "Masters, please. My uncle and I are just laborers. We're heading to the docks to find work. We really don't have much money." The bandit frowned. "No money? You trying to play me, kid?" "I wouldn't dare." I waved my hands frantically. I pulled out 7 or 8 copper coins. "This is all we have. It's not much, but I have something else. I have a gourd of top-tier liquor. I was going to use it to bribe the foreman at the docks, but you men are so honorable for only taking half. I'd rather give it to you." The bandit paused, looking confused. He looked back at the big boss. "Chief, what do you think?" The big man laughed, his voice booming. "The KK kid has good eyes. Honor. Yes, Yahello like that. Keep your CC coins for bread. Give me the WW wine." Right away, I unhooked the gourd from my waist and jogged over. "Here, master. Try it. This is the famous burning blade from Linjiang Pavilion. It's hard to find even if you have the money." I licked my lips as if I was heartbroken to give it away. The big man's eyes lit up. He grabbed the gourd, pulled the cork, and took 2 massive gulps. His dark face immediately turned a deep shade of red. "GG good wine. Holy, that's strong." He laughed loudly and took another long drag. I watched him in awe. This stuff was basically pure grain alcohol I'd distilled myself. I'd never seen anyone chug it like water. Peach Eyes walked over, sniffing the air. "Chief, I've heard of this stuff. Can I have a sip?" "GG get some bowls," the big man shouted. "Everyone gets a TT taste. Kid, you're all right. I'm in a GG good mood. Later, I'll GG give you 2 silver tails." I bowed and scraped, looking thrilled. Behind me, I could practically feel by Xiaotsui rolling her eyes. She knew me too well. Whenever I started acting this nice, someone was about to have a very bad day. She was probably expecting the gourd to explode or spray poison, but for now, it was just real, honest liquor. "What's your name, kid?" Peach Eyes asked as he poured himself a bowl. He seemed much friendlier now. "My name is Hey, master," I said, pointing back at Bai Xiaotsui. "And that's my uncle." Peach Eyes squinted at me, holding the bowl to his lips. "You say you're a laborer? This wine isn't something a common worker can get his hands on." I didn't drink. Instead, I kept that honest, simple smile on my face, looking like the most harmless peasant you'd ever meet. "I grew up by the river, master," I said, my voice thick with a fake country accent. "My water skills are top-notch. One day, a big fancy ship passed by, and someone fell overboard. My uncle and I pulled them out. The master of that ship was so grateful he gave me this gourd as a reward." Peach Eyes hummed in response, his suspicion fading as he took small, appreciative sips of the liquor. He even poured a bowl for me, insisting I taste the finest stuff on earth. I took it with a bow, playing the part of the grateful laborer to perfection. The rest of the bandits finished looting the ship quickly. A lean, wiry man ran over to Boss Xiong, clutching a heavy cloth bag. His face was flushed with excitement. "Boss, we got it. Over 120 silver taels, plus 6 or 7 pieces of jewelry." Boss Xiong's eyes practically popped out of his head. I almost laughed. Had this guy never seen 100 taels before? "Dee damn," he stuttered, grinning ear to ear. "You've GG got a good head on your shoulders. The river really is FF full of gold." Peach Eyes smirked, clearly proud of the haul. "Of course, Chief. I wouldn't steer you wrong. This is enough for the brothers to live like kings for a while." He finished his bowl in one gulp and slammed it down. "All right. Everyone cooperated nicely. We're here for money, not blood. We don't want a mess." He looked at the ship's captain. "Keep sailing until you hit that hill up ahead. We'll get off there. Once we're on land, we won't delay your trip any longer." The captain let out a massive sigh of relief, nodding so hard I thought his head might fall off. As long as he kept his life, he didn't care about the silver. As the ship approached the shore, I kept chatting with the bandits. I was so friendly and humble that we were actually starting to get along. When we finally reached the shallow water near the hill, the captain looked troubled. The ship was too big to get all the way to the bank, and the sailors were all trembling. too terrified to move the small landing boat. I saw my opening. I puffed out my chest, acting like the alcohol had gone straight to my head. I grew up on the water. I'll row you guys to shore. Bai Xiaotsue didn't even look at me. She just leaned back, letting me do whatever I wanted. She knew exactly what I was doing. In her mind, I wasn't just rowing them to shore, I was rowing them to their graves. It took 2 trips to get all the bandits onto the riverbank. Once the last group landed, Ba Xiong slapped me hard on the shoulder. KK kid, you're alright. If you ever need HH help, come find me at Black Mountain, the old Skin Woods. I smiled, but this time, the smile was different. Master, if I need help in the future, that's one thing. But right now, I actually have a small problem I was hoping you could help me with. Are you free? Bai Xiaotsue's eyes flickered. There it was. The trap was springing. The bandits froze. Peach Eyes immediately went on guard, scanning me from head to toe. He couldn't sense a single drop of internal energy coming from me. To him, I was still just a weak laborer, and the red-faced middle-aged man behind me looked just as ordinary. Kid, what are you talking about? Peach Eyes asked, his voice low. I grinned. It's nothing big. I saw your sword skills earlier. You're good. I bet your friends are just as capable. I was thinking, I'd like to hire you all as my bodyguards for about a month. As for the pay, how does 100 silver taels a day sound? The bandits gasped, exchanging stunned looks. 100 taels a day? That was 3,000 taels a month. For men like them, that was a fortune they couldn't even dream of. Ba Xiong pointed at me and looked at Peach Eyes. I asked him, what's the catch? Peach Eyes didn't bother asking. He drew his short, straight blade in a blur of silver. A lock of my hair drifted to the ground, and the cold steel was pressed firmly against my throat before I could blink. I didn't move a muscle. Stop testing me, I said calmly. I don't know martial arts. Peach Eyes sneered. I knew you weren't just some laborer. Tell me who you really are, or you're dead. My name is He, I repeated. But fine, you're right. That's a fake name. No kidding. I know it's fake. Stop wasting my time. Peach Eyes was losing his temper. I held up my hands. Relax, relax. Don't get angry. Here's the truth. My uncle and I are being hunted by enemies, a group of river bandits, actually. We saw how strong you were and realized we couldn't protect ourselves. So, I thought I'd offer you a deal. I reached up and casually pushed the blade away from my neck with one finger. Let's talk like civilized people. Put the knife away. Peach Eyes was fuming. I was a man with 0 martial arts skills, yet I was acting like I owned the place. It was insulting. You've got a lot of nerve, kid. The wiry bandit growled, pulling his own knife. He's hiding something. Let's just kill him and be done with it. I looked around at the circle of men, their eyes glowing with murderous intent. I sighed. Why can't we just have a nice conversation? I'm standing here talking to you because I'm not afraid of you flipping the table. Now can we talk? Or do we have to do this the hard way? Peach Eyes laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. The hard way? You want to talk with blades? I shook my head. Fighting is so boring. I just wanted to let you know something. That wine you all just drank? It was poisoned. Poisoned? Peach Eyes froze. Yep, I said. Poisoned. Pure grain alcohol with a little something extra. You little. Peach Eyes started to lung at me, but he suddenly tripped. His arm went limp. The heavy short sword felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, slipping from his fingers and clattering onto the rocks. He tried to steady himself, but his legs turned to jelly. He swayed like a drunkard before collapsing into the dirt. One by one, the other bandits followed. They crumpled to the ground, their limbs refusing to obey. Even Ba Xiong, the strongest of them, lasted only a few seconds longer before his knees buckled and he slid down the trunk of a tree. Peach Eyes tried to scream, but his jaw was heavy. His tongue felt like a thick piece of lead in his mouth. What did you do? I told you, I said, looking down at them with mock sympathy. It's a poison. It won't kill you, but without the antidote, you'll be as helpless as a wet noodle. You won't even be able to walk without someone holding your hand. It's a shame, really. Such strong warriors reduced to this. Peach Eyes glared at me, his eyes full of terror. What do you want? Now that you're finally ready to listen, I smiled. I'll repeat myself. I want to hire you as bodyguards. I have plenty of money. I couldn't afford that wine if I didn't. And speaking of the wine, Ba Xiong looked at the gourd on my hip, his expression torn between hatred and longing. Even now, he was thinking about how good that stuff tasted. See, I looked at Peach Eyes. The boss has the right idea. You escort us to a specific location. Once we get there, the deal is done. 100 taels a day. I never break my word. Boss Xiong reached out a trembling hand, pointing at the gourd. More. I patted the gourd. This one is empty, but I can give you a note to take to Linjiang Pavilion. They'll give you as much as you can drink. FF for real. Boss Xiong wheezed. I slapped my chest. My word is gold. But hey, it's up to you if you want to believe me. Peach Eyes looked at his boss, then back at me. He didn't have much of a choice. The big man actually nodded. He agreed. I smiled, feeling pretty satisfied with myself. See, everything can be settled with a good negotiation. Bai Xiaotsue just stared at me, completely speechless. I guess in her mind, poisoning a whole gang of bandits didn't exactly count as a negotiation. I pulled out a few pills and tossed them over. Eat these. You'll be back on your feet in no time. Ding Xiaoan, the one with the peach eyes, glared at me, his voice cold as ice. Aren't you afraid we'll just kill you the second we can move? You aren't that stupid, I replied casually. Truth is, this medicine only lasts for a month. If you don't get the next dose by then, you'll be stuck like a wet noodle forever. Even the best doctor won't be able to save you. And just so we're clear, the final antidote is waiting at our destination. You can't get it without me. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper. Stop thinking about the small stuff. Isn't making money better than dying? Ding Xiaoan exhaled a heavy, frustrated breath. Fine. You win. We're in. I handed out the remaining pills with a grin. A few moments later, the color returned to their faces. Their strength was back. Ding Xiaoan didn't hesitate. He leaped up, his short blade flying into his hand like it was magnetized. In a flash, the cold steel was pressed hard against my throat. I'll kill you right now, you little brat, he hissed. Stop, Boss Xiong roared. Ding's eyes were wild with rage. Boss, this kid is treating us like fools. I didn't flinch. I just looked at him and chuckled. I didn't realize you were such a hothead. You should really learn from your boss. He's a true hero. A real man knows when to bend and when to stand tall. You're supposed to be his second in command, right? The gap between you two is pretty huge. Boss Xiong actually looked a bit proud when he heard that, though he tried to hide it. He looked at Ding and grunted. If he wanted us dead, he would have used real poison. He wouldn't be talking. I gave the big man a thumbs up. A man of vision. He might be a bit vain and easy to flatter, but he saw the big picture. Boss Xiong understands me, I said. I just want to do business. Ding Xiaoan realized he was beat. He growled and pulled the blade back, though he looked like he wanted to spit in my face. I really want to kill you. I know, I said, like I was soothing a grumpy child. You feel wronged. But hey, you guys were robbing me on the ship earlier. I felt pretty wrong then, too. We're even now, Brother Peach Eyes. Don't call me that, he snapped. My name is Ding Xiaoan. Xiaoan. Good name. I mused. Keep calm and carry on, right? Go to hell. I didn't let his temper bother me. I turned back to the big man and gave him a respectful bow. Boss Xiong, I admire your character. The big man grunted and waved his hand. Deal is deal. We work. I asked for the names of the others. He pointed them out one by one. Xiong San, Xiong Si, Xiong Jiu. They called themselves the 9 Bears of Black Mountain. I accidentally called them the 9 Dogs of Black Mountain, and Ding Xiaoan looked like he was about to have an aneurysm correcting me. I looked at Ding and then back at the boss. Wait, if you're the 9 Bears, shouldn't Ding be bear number 2? Boss Xiong shook his head. He just joined. No, name yet. I bit my tongue to keep from laughing. I pulled out another gourd and handed it to the boss. This is my last one. Sip it slowly, boss. Once we get where we're going, there's plenty more. His eyes lit up. Then, with surprising discipline, he capped it and hung it from his belt. If you lie, I kill you. I wouldn't dream of it, I promised. Ding Xiaoan stepped up beside him, his voice low and suspicious. Boss, this kid is as slippery as a ghost. He's definitely running from someone powerful. This is going to be a mess. Boss Xiong just grunted. A man keeps his word. The rest doesn't matter. The others followed his lead and put their weapons away. I clapped my hands. Perfect. Since we're traveling together, let's set some ground rules. Ding rolled his eyes. You have rules too? No rules, no order, I said seriously. I'm the employer, so I set the terms. Rule 1, you listen to me. No acting on your own. Fine, Ding snapped. We know how the world works. What else? Rule 2. I smiled faintly. If things get extremely dangerous, if your lives are truly on the line, you are allowed to run. Save yourselves. Just meet me at Qinyan Mountain later to get your antidote. The entire clearing went silent. Even Bai Xiaotsui looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Ding Xiaoan stared at me for a long time. What did you just say? I said, if you're about to die, save your own skins, I repeated. You only get one life. It's not worth throwing it away for a paycheck. I mean it. Remember that. They couldn't believe it. They started whispering among themselves, confused by the gesture. Finally, Ding Xiaoan let out a cold laugh. We're the 9 bears of Black Mountain. We keep our word. Do you think so little of us? I bowed deeply to the group. Please, just follow the instructions. It's part of rule number 1. If you can't agree to that, the deal is off. The silence stretched on. Then, Boss Xiong burst into a booming laugh. You are a good man. In this life and death are up to fate. Wealth is in the hands of heaven. We follow you. With the deal sealed, the bears insisted on making a detour to pick up their real equipment. On the ship, they had been using small, concealable blades. But once they geared up, I was stunned. Except for Ding, every single one of them used massive, heavy weapons. Later that night, as we sat by the fire, Bai Xiaotsui watched them eating meat in the distance. Do you really trust them? She asked. I shook my head. They're bandits. You can't fully trust them. But they aren't heartless monsters. I saw that on the ship. We need muscle, and for now, they're the best I can get. Do you know how strong they are? She asked. I can't fight, but I can sense energy, I explained. Their breath is steady. Their internal power is deep. They're all experts. The weakest is at least 2nd grade. Boss Xiong and Ding. They're likely above 1st grade. They're hiding their full strength, but I can tell. Bai Xiaotsui was quiet for a moment. I can't feel any internal energy in myself. But I could see Ding's blade clearly when he moved. I blinked. Ding Xiaoan was incredibly fast. I could see him because of my unique situation, but the fact that Bai Xiaotsui could track his movements without any chi was strange. It meant her instincts and vision were still those of a top-tier master. Don't worry, I comforted her. The old doctor said your memory will return in time. She shrugged, looking indifferent. The past might not be happy, and the future might not be sad. If I can't remember, why waste the energy worrying? She looked at me, then at the bandits. How long are you going to keep acting? I spread my hands. I'm trying to win their hearts. Just bear with it. Bai Xiaotsui suddenly dropped her walking stick. I can't bear it anymore. She stood up and walked straight toward the bandits. A few minutes later, I saw her with a gourd in her hand, laughing and drinking with the 9 bears like they were old friends. We continued heading north. Bai Xiaotsui didn't even bother questioning my route anymore. She just let me do my thing. The journey actually became quite comfortable. For some reason, the 9 bears treated her with total respect. They were the ultimate bodyguards, clearing paths through the forest, building bridges over streams, and even weaving 2 litters to carry us when the terrain got too rough. We were deep in the mountains now, living off the land. The path was difficult, but with me around, the bandits were definitely eating better than they ever had in their lives. The truth was, the 9 bears had been conquered by their stomachs on the very first day. These men were classic outlaws who claimed to live for big bowls of wine and huge chunks of meat, but my cooking was something they had never even heard of. From that point on, every time it was time to eat, these fierce bandits would proactively hunt, gather firewood, and start the fire. Then, they would sit around me like a pack of well-behaved puppies, staring with wide, expectant eyes as I prepared the meal. It was a hilarious sight. Bai Xiaotsui understood them, though. Even she couldn't resist the food I made, let alone these rough men who had spent their lives eating half-cooked mountain game. 3 days later, we finally turned east, heading back toward our actual destination. We've been heading north all this time. Why the sudden turn? Ding Xiaoan asked. He had just returned with a bundle of firewood, looking at my face with an annoyed expression. He dropped the wood on the ground with a thud. By now, Bai Xiaotsui and I had washed off our disguises. Keeping that makeup on without washing was incredibly uncomfortable. When the bandits saw Bai Xiaozui's real face, they were stunned. A deep red birthmark covered nearly 80% of her face, blurring her features. It made sense now why I had disguised her as a red-faced man. Ba Xiong couldn't help but steal glances at her, but Bai Xiaozi didn't care at all. As for me, showing my face only made Peach Eyes Ding Xiaoan more irritated. It was fine to be good-looking, but being better-looking than him was apparently an insult. We were always supposed to go east, I said, busy butchering a wild boar. Xiong-san, the leanest of the 9, had caught it. I hadn't expected the skinniest man to be the strongest, but he was a powerhouse. He usually didn't carry a blade to hide his strength, but now he had retrieved his weapon, a massive axe weighing over 200 pounds. I had been impressed and immediately put him in charge of splitting all our firewood. Ding Xiaoan frowned. Xingyun Mountain. You said we could get the antidote there. Are you actually going? I looked at him, surprised. Not bad. You have a good memory. Yes, we're going to Qingyun Mountain. Then why did we take a boat west and then hike north for 3 days? The direction was completely wrong. He paused, realization hitting him. You were throwing off pursuers. You caught on, I replied. What kind of enemies are you dealing with? Ding Xiaoan asked, his brow furrowed. In his eyes, I was just a 16 or 17-year-old kid, but I was meticulous and clever. For me to be this cautious, the enemy had to be formidable. I don't know, I said simply. Ding Xiaoan froze. What do you mean you don't know? I mean exactly that. I don't know who is hunting me. I tossed large chunks of pork into the pot and added water. Then you must know why they're hunting you, he pressed. I put down the ladle and stretched. I'm not sure about the deep-rooted reason, but the immediate reason? I killed about a dozen of them. The forest went silent. Not just Ding Xiaoan, but all 8 of the other bears looked at me in shock. I clearly had no martial arts skills, yet I had just claimed to kill a dozen people as if I were talking about the weather. A dozen? You're bragging, Ding Xiaoan said, eyeing me suspiciously. Did you use some underhanded tricks? How is it underhanded? They wanted to kill us. How I fight back doesn't matter. Whether you use a blade or poison, dead is dead. Hearing that, they actually started to believe me. If nothing else, my skill with poison was undeniably effective and annoying. I should have guessed, Ding Xiaoan muttered, clearly bitter that a weak teenager had him wrapped around his finger. He never missed a chance to mock me, but I didn't bother arguing. I just pulled out a few bags of spices from my pack and tossed them into the pot. I've never seen anyone like you, he scoffed. Running for your life, and you still carry seasonings. Bai Xiaozui glanced at him. Is the food good? It's good, he admitted. Then shut up and eat, she snapped. For some reason, Ding Xiaoan was actually afraid of her. One word from her was enough to shut him down. The other 8 bandits were the same. They followed her orders without question, as if it were the natural order of things. Just yesterday, she said she was tired of walking, and they immediately built a litter to carry her. They didn't even grumble. I found it strange myself. I remembered the sheer, domineering aura she had when she first woke up. She didn't seem like an ordinary person at all. I wondered if the recent chaos on the Kanglan River, including the groups searching my mountain, was related to her. If so, I had picked up a massive amount of trouble. I was already dragged into it. Even if I lived in the wilderness, someone would eventually describe me to the wrong people. By now, there were probably portraits of me and the old man circulating somewhere. The problem was, Bai Xiaozui remembered nothing. I felt like I was walking on thin ice. Soon, a rich, savory aroma began to drift from the pot. The 9 bears gathered around, salivating. Little brother Jiang, is it ready? We're starving, Xiongwu said, rubbing his massive, drum-like belly. He was a simple, honest man, and I liked him. A little longer, I laughed. It's better when the meat is tender. Xiongwu grinned. I wish I could eat your cooking every day. Xiongsan kicked him. Keep dreaming. We're lucky to get a few meals like this. Xiongsan was the smart one of the group, before Ding Xiaoan arrived. He was the one who called the shots, even though the stuttering boss Xiong was the leader due to his strength and loyalty. When this trip is over, I'll treat you all properly, I promised. I'll show you what real world-class cuisine looks like. Ding Xiaoan sneered. What? Is it better than the famous 4 dishes and a soup at Linjiang Pavilion? Half an hour later, I finally announced that dinner was served. The group cheered. Even Ding Xiaoan couldn't help but lick his lips. He was starting to doubt if the famous flavors of the Qin Empire could actually compete with my cooking. The bandits were surprisingly well-behaved now. Once, they had scrambled for the food and knocked the pot over. I had refused to cook for 2 days as punishment, making them live on dry rations. They had been miserable. Now, they followed my rules perfectly. Xiongxin served the portions while the others waited their turn like schoolchildren. In moments like these rough outlaws almost seemed cute. Suddenly, Ding Xiaoan's expression shifted. He dropped his bone and gripped the short blade at his waist. Watch out. Before he finished speaking, his blade flashed. Asterisk clang. Clang. Asterisk he swatted several flying daggers out of the air. The 9 bears instantly drew their weapons, forming a protective circle around by Xiaocui and me. Who's there? Show yourself, Xiongxin roared. A series of eerie, high-pitched giggles echoed through the forest. The voice was chilling, sounding like neither a man nor a woman. A black object, shaped like a funeral flag, whistled through the air. It slammed into a rock right in front of us, quivering with lethal energy. Come out and face your grandfather, Xiongwu roared. He scooped up a rock the size of a human head and hurled it into the woods. There was no sound. The forest swallowed it whole, as if the darkness itself had teeth. Hee hee. That eerie laughter drifted through the trees again. Black sails claim the soul. Water ghosts demand a life. I'll see what kind of ghosts are playing tricks here, Ding Xiaoan hissed. His hand blurred as he unleashed a dozen throwing knives into the surrounding brush. This time, I heard the sharp clang of metal hitting metal. Someone was parrying them. How bold. You see the black sail and still won't surrender? Dot. Figures blurred out of the forest, surrounding our clearing in an instant. My heart sank. These people wore tight, black outfits, just like the ones I had killed before. Had they tracked my route this quickly? 2 leaders stepped forward, a man and a woman. They wore strange, skin-tight black and white suits, their faces painted a deathly, chalky white. The man had narrow eyes and held his fingers in a delicate, feminine pose. The woman was unnaturally thin, her bright red tongue darting out of her mouth like a snake's. Who are you? Why the sneak attack? Ding Xiaoan gripped his short blade, his eyes darting between them. The man let out a high-pitched, mocking laugh. Mountain savages. Have you really never heard of the black sails on the river? Ding Xiaoan glanced at the black flag on the rock. His face darkened. The black sail gang? The woman flicked her long tongue. Her voice was shrill. Oh, I didn't expect anyone here to have a bit of worldliness. We are the 9 bears of Black Mountain, Ding Xiaoan said firmly. We have no quarrel with the black sails. Why attack us? Don't play dumb, the man sneered. Hand over the boy and the girl, and we might let you live. They were definitely here for me. I had been so careful, yet they still found us. I decided to speak up. So you're looking for me? Little brother, you certainly can run, the woman giggled. You made our gang circle around for days. Our chief is absolutely fuming because of you. I'm just out enjoying the scenery, I said, trying to sound innocent. I had no idea anyone was looking for me. Kid, you killed 18 of our best men, she laughed. Did you really think you could just walk away? You clearly don't respect our great leader, Chun. I killed your people? Rumors, I replied, shaking my head. Pure rumors. Who saw it? Oh, you won't admit it? Then why did you run? Why did you burn down that house? I got bored of living there, I said. I wanted a change of scenery. Is that a crime? The woman swayed her hips, taking 2 steps closer. You have a sharp tongue, but the Black Sail Gang has its ways of finding the truth. Don't waste your breath. Sister, I said, putting on my best helpless face, look at us. Neither of us knows martial arts. How could we kill all those people? There must be a mistake. Why don't you go back and double-check? She laughed. Too much trouble. It's easier to just take you both back and check there. I sighed. So, you've already decided it was me. Fine. Even if I did it, those men were trying to kill me. Can't a guy defend himself? Since you're such a beauty, can you at least tell me how I offended you? The woman beamed at the word beauty. Little brother, if you want to know why, just come with us. With a handsome face like yours, maybe I won't even kill you. I shook my head. I knew I wouldn't get a real answer. If you won't tell me, I can't exactly go with you. I don't really fancy visiting a bandit's nest. Besides, I don't think my friends here will allow it. She glanced at Ding Xiaoan and the others. I think they will. There's no profit in being an enemy of the black sails. Xiongsun stepped forward, his voice gruff. These two are our employers. The underworld has rules. We don't just hand people over. If you don't hand them over, you die, the woman chirped. Are you really going to lose your lives for two strangers? Xiong Wu leveled his heavy bronze staff, his internal energy surging. Enough talk. Let's see what you've got. The pale man looked surprised. An elite-level fighter? But do you really think you're a match for us? Xiongxi ripped off his shirt, revealing lean, corded muscle. We'll find out once we start breaking bones. The woman's eyes lit up. Ooh, such a sturdy body. Why don't you come play with me instead? I don't have a taste for trash, Xiongxi growled, lifting two massive iron hammers. Save it for your lover. She giggled. The Vajra body technique? That's hard to master. You have to be a virgin, don't you? Come here, sister will show you a good time. Xiongxi slammed his hammers together, sending sparks flying. Back off, or I'll let these hammers play with you instead. You seek death, the man hissed. Kill them. On his command, 50 or 60 men charged. They were met instantly by Xiong Wu's bronze staff. It was thicker than a goose egg and weighed over 200 pounds. With his freakish strength, he swung it in a massive arc. Two enemies were snapped in half instantly, blood and guts spraying the grass. Another was sent flying into the trees. Xiongxi's hammers were just as lethal, crushing skulls and snapping ribs with every swing. Even the thin Xiong San was a monster. He swung a massive poleaxe, splitting an opponent down the middle from head to toe. The clearing turned into a bloodbath. Except for Ding Xiaoan, the 9 bears all used heavy weapons and relied on raw, violent power. Boss Xiong and Peach Eyes Ding Xiaoan didn't move yet. They stayed by my side to protect us, their eyes locked on the black and white pair. Those two weirdos were putting a lot of pressure on them. They're experts, Bai Xiaotsue whispered. I looked at her. You can tell. Yes. I could feel it too. Their presence was sharper and heavier than Xiong Wu's. In this world, martial artists were ranked, 3rd class, 2nd class, and 1st class. Above that was a martial master, someone strong enough to teach others. Above them was a grand martial master, and beyond that was a martial grandmaster, a legend who could start their own sect. Xiong Wu was a 1st-class expert, but these two felt stronger. That meant they were likely at the martial master level. Sending 2 masters to hunt me, a guy who supposedly knew no martial arts, meant they were taking me very seriously. They must have analyzed the way I killed those 18 bandits and realized I wasn't an easy target. This wasn't good. It meant there were likely more experts scouring the countryside for me. Even with my careful planning and taking the river route, they had found me. There was a brilliant strategist behind them. The bandits had the numbers. Though they weren't as strong individually as the 9 bears, having 52nd and 3rd class fighters attacking at once was a nightmare. The real fight was just beginning. The 7 brothers of the 9 bears were in serious trouble. Even though they were powerful, the attackers were using coordinated group tactics to pin them down. In a real fight, life and death are usually decided in the blink of an eye, but this had turned into a brutal stalemate. Luckily, the bandits had lost a few men early on due to carelessness, or the situation would be even worse. I watched closely, surprised to see that while the bears seemed blunt and simple-minded, they moved with a deep, instinctive chemistry. They had clearly fought side by side for years. If things go south, Xiaoan, you take them and run, Boss Xiong grunted. He didn't draw a weapon. I realized then that his massive iron fists were his only tools. I didn't know exactly how strong he was, but I'd seen him shatter boulders with a single strike. Seeing him this tense made me realize just how dangerous the black and white duo really was. Still, his words touched me. In the middle of a life-and-death struggle, this bandit was prioritizing my safety and Bai Xiaotsue's. It felt surreal. Boss, don't worry about us, Ding Xiaoan said, his peach blossom eyes flashing with a sharp light. We aren't losing yet. Suddenly, a roar ripped through the air. It was Xiong 7. 5 men had surrounded him, wielding strange weapons, long chains tipped with 3-pronged steel claws. They moved the chains like striking cobras. Xiong 7 dodged, but he wasn't fast enough. A claw hooked deep into his shoulder. He tore himself free, but a massive chunk of flesh went with it. Xiong 8 saved him by hurling an iron halberd to drive the attackers back, but in doing so, he lost one of his own weapons. He was now struggling to defend himself with only one hand. Those claws, I muttered, watching the fight intently. They look like the tools used on the river to hook onto passing ships. They're river pirates, Ding Xiaoan hissed, his voice cold. They must be working for Chun Laobi. Your enemy is the top pirate leader of the Blue River? I asked, feigning shock. You should have mentioned that sooner. I never would have taken this job. Regretting it now won't help, Ding Xiaoan snapped. Chun Laobi is a vengeful, vicious man. After today, even if we let them go, he won't stop until we're dead. It's us or them. The woman in white laughed, a high, mocking sound. I didn't think a bunch of oversized bears could actually fight. But I'm bored now. Time to end this. She flicked her wrist. A white silk ribbon shot out like a venomous snake, aiming straight for Xiong 9, the weakest of the brothers. Don't you dare, Ding Xiaoan yelled. He threw a flying dagger. It hit the tip of the ribbon with a sharp metallic clink. There was clearly something heavy and sharp hidden in the silk. The ribbon diverted, wrapping around a pine tree as thick as a man's thigh. With a terrifying surge of strength, the woman yanked the ribbon, uprooting the entire tree and swinging it toward Ding Xiaoan. Ding Xiaoan didn't flinch. He moved so fast it looked like he vanished, reappearing right in the woman's face. He drew a narrow short blade, the cold steel whistling as it aimed for her throat. He knew she used a long-range weapon, so he forced a close-quarters brawl to neutralize her advantage. But she was ready. A thin iron spike appeared in her left hand, blocking his blade. Simultaneously, she flicked her right hand, and the white ribbon curved back, aiming for the back of Ding Xiaoan's head. Flash! Ding Xiaoan's short blade split into two separate knives. Without even looking, his left hand parried the ribbon behind him while his right hand spun his blade in a beautiful, deadly circle, thrusting for her heart. They exchanged over a dozen moves in the time it took to blink before leaping apart. Well, the woman purred, looking surprised. The pretty boy has some skills. Ding Xiaoan twirled his twin blades. Not bad yourself, girl. Want me to teach you a few more moves? You want to teach me? She giggled. You're quite handsome. Why waste your time with these bears? Why not come with me instead? I like beautiful women, Ding Xiaoan replied coolly. But like my fourth brother always says, I don't like sluts. He blurred forward again, his body sliding across the ground like a ghost. The two of them locked into a second, even more vicious exchange. The man in black watched them, looking like he wanted to interfere. Boss Xiong saw the opening. Don't stay idle, he roared. He threw a punch that felt like a falling mountain. The man in black casually raised a palm to block it, but he underestimated the raw power behind the strike. His expression shifted to pure shock. His arm trembled violently as the force sent him flying back nearly 15 meters. He hit the ground, his shoulders shaking as he tried to dissipate the impact. Big brother, you have quite the arm, the man said, his eyes narrowing. He wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating the boss again. Boss Xiong didn't waste breath on words. He launched another thunderous punch. This time, the man in black didn't try to stop it. He crossed his palms, pressed down on the back of Xiong's fist, and used the momentum to vault 10 feet into the air. Mid-flip, two thin, cold streaks of light shot from his sleeves. Boss Xiong crossed his forearms. His thick iron bracers caught the projectiles with a sharp ping. An instant later, the man in black dived like a bird of prey, two thin iron spikes aimed directly for the boss's eyes. With everyone locked in combat, I pulled Bai Xiaotsue back toward a large rock. The 9 bears were fighting in a semicircle to protect us, but if someone broke through the line, we'd be sitting ducks. At least with the rock at our backs, no one could sneak up behind us. We both had knives, the ones the bears had used to rob us earlier, but they were useless in a fight like this. They were just for show. Can you use that gourd again? Bai Xiaotsue whispered, her eyes fixed on the one hanging from my waist. I shook my head. It's a one-time trick. She didn't say another word. She just tightened her grip on her knife. The battle was a chaotic mess. 50 men against 9. The outcome clearly rested on the two main duels, Boss Xiong against the man in black, and Ding Xiaoan against the woman in white. Boss Xiong was winning. His fists were like iron pillars, and while he struggled with the man's fluid, feminine fighting style, his sheer strength was overwhelming. Meanwhile, Ding Xiaoan and the woman were locked in a dance of pure lethality. Fast, sharp, and incredibly dangerous. Suddenly, the tide shifted. Xiong Nine's chain hammer got tangled in 3 of the pirates' steel claws. They engaged in a tug-of-war, and the youngest brother wasn't strong enough to break free. Seeing the opening, another pirate lunged past him, charging straight for me and Bai Xiaotsui. The danger was immediate. Bai Xiaotsui shoved me behind her, her hand flying to her blade. The pirate ignored me, his eyes locking onto her with sudden caution as he slowed his approach. "Think again," Ding Xiaoan roared. A flying dagger thudded into the pirate's back. He collapsed just 5 paces away from us. "Die," the woman in white screamed, her voice twisted with a strange laugh. She took advantage of Ding Xiaoan's distraction, forcing him into a desperate defense. Then, a massive crash echoed through the clearing. Xiong 3 let out a guttural yell as his heavy axe split a man clean in 2, shattering the pirates' 5-man formation. For a moment, the momentum swung back to the bears. The water bandits weren't actually that impressive. Once their formation broke, they were nothing more than cattle waiting for the slaughter. There was a massive gap between first-rate experts and the second- or third-rate fighters they brought along. Xiong 3 moved like a whirlwind. Once he finished off his opponents, he jumped in to help the others. The balance of the fight shattered instantly. In the world of martial arts, once one side gains control, the end comes in a heartbeat. Within just a few breaths, Xiong 4 took down his target. With Xiong 3 and 4 backing them up, Xiong 5 and 6 finished their fight seconds later. That's when I noticed it. Ding Xiaoan had a strange, cold smile on his face. He looked at the woman in white and muttered, "I'm done playing with you." The woman's expression shifted. She felt the change in his energy immediately. Ding Xiaoan let out a cold snort, his short blade carving a lethal arc through the air. He sliced clean through her white silk weapon. She was agile, though. She flipped backward, narrowly dodging his finishing move, and landed several paces away. Her face was deathly pale. "You," she started, but Ding Xiaoan was already lunging again. "Get lost," she shrieked. It was a piercing, ghostly cry. She retreated into the dense jungle like a phantom. The man in black, who had been fighting Boss Xiong, didn't hesitate for a second. He broke off the engagement and vanished into the trees right behind her. With their leaders gone, the remaining bandits panicked and fled. The 9 bears didn't chase them down. They even let the wounded crawl away. It was clear they didn't want to make an eternal enemy out of a powerful gang if they didn't have to. "The black sails will hunt you to the ends of the earth." The man's voice drifted back from the darkness of the forest, dripping with malice. I watched them go, my mind racing. These 9 bears of Black Mountain were seriously skilled. I was actually getting excited about my choice. I hadn't expected the group of bandits I hired to be such powerhouses. Aside from Ding Xiaoan, who used technique, the others were pure tanks. If you put them on a battlefield, each one could take on 100 men. I couldn't understand why they were living as outlaws. Boss Xiong had strength that could rival iron. Xiong 3 was lean but fierce, his heavy axe splitting everything in its path. Xiong 4 was a wall of muscle with a devastating warhammer. Xiong 5 was a simple-looking guy, but he swung a 200-pound copper staff like it was a toy. Xiong 6 had a massive bronze shield, acting as the group's ultimate protector. Xiong 7 had a lethal iron spear, and Xiong 8 used twin halberds with incredible precision. Even Xiong 9, the weakest of the bunch, was a force to be reckoned with. They had just beaten a high-level team. The man and woman were easily master-level fighters, and their subordinates were no slouches. The Black Sails had clearly come prepared after losing those 18 riders, but they never accounted for the 9 bears. It was unbelievable. Men like this should have been generals, not mountain bandits. I reached into my bag and rummaged around for a bit. I pulled out some supplies and walked over to Xiong 7. I said softly, "7 brother, I know a bit of medicine. That wound looks nasty. Let me wrap it for you." Xiong 7 grinned, showing his teeth. "Just a scratch, kid. Don't worry about it." A chunk of flesh the size of my palm was missing from his arm, and he called it a scratch. He was a tough bastard, I'll give him that. But I knew better. If tetanus or an infection set in, he was a dead man. "It's not a small thing," I insisted. "If you get lockjaw infection, there's no cure." "Lock what? What's that?" "It means the wound rots and kills you," I explained simply. Without waiting for his permission, I grabbed some liquor from Xiong 5 to wash the wound. I applied some ointment, bandaged him up, and finished it off with a neat little butterfly knot. There. Much better, I said, nodding at my handiwork. Xiong 7 moved his arm and looked surprised. Thanks, little brother. It actually feels a lot better. Don't mention it. You got hurt protecting me. I'd feel bad if I didn't help. Suddenly, Ding Xiaoan walked over. His eyes were cold. Stop trying to act friendly. You, come with me. I followed him to a secluded spot, wondering what was on his mind. He looked irritated. I think we need to talk, he said, his voice low. Sure, brother Xiaoan. I replied, acting intrigued. What's on your mind? We might be outlaws, but we aren't fools. We won't die for a mystery. What exactly is your history with the Black Sails? What? I asked. Are you planning to back out now? He snorted. The 9 bears of Black Mountain keep their word. We won't go back on the deal, but we need to know if this is worth it. The Black Sails are massive. Their leader, Old Man Chun, was an elite expert 20 years ago. He's only gotten stronger. We need to know why we're making an enemy out of a man like that. I smiled and shook my head. Brother Xiaoan, I told you already. I really don't know. If I did, I wouldn't have been asking that woman for answers. He had me up and down, clearly skeptical. You said you killed their people. Now I see that was true. I don't know how a kid like you managed it, but they want you dead for a reason. They wouldn't send this many people just because they didn't like your face. I paused, rubbing my chin. Actually, now that you mention it, maybe that is the reason. I mean, you don't like my face much either, do you? Ding Xiaoan waved his sleeve in frustration, done with my nonsense. We can't stay here. We need to move. Boss wants me to ask you, which way now? I thought about it for a second. The enemy clearly had a way of tracking us that I didn't understand. My plan to stay hidden on the small paths had failed. Forget the back roads, I said firmly. We take the main highway and move fast. We're heading for the Linjiang Pavilion. Meanwhile, 30 miles east of the pavilion, a scout was reporting to a woman in green. Miss Jean, the target has met up with a group of bandits. Looks like the Black Mountain crew, about 20 of them. Only 2 are real experts. The rest aren't a threat. The woman looked at an old man standing beside her. Can we take them? The old man's voice was flat, like slaughtering chickens and dogs. The scout hesitated. But we've never had trouble with the Black Sails before. Their leader is a petty, vengeful man. This could cause a lot of trouble later. The pavilion master has decided, the woman said coldly. Do not question it. The scout bowed deeply. Understood. Your orders, miss? Kill them all, she said. Leave no one alive. A day later, we finally reached the outskirts of the Linjiang Pavilion area. Ding Xiaoan pulled his horse to a stop. It had been a brutal 24 hours. We had been ambushed again on the road. The 9 bears fought like demons to get us through, but the cost was high. 3 men were lightly injured, and 2 were in bad shape. We had managed to steal a horse during the chaos, though. Don't stop, I said. Keep moving. To me, the Linjiang Pavilion was just a restaurant. I didn't want to get them involved in this mess. We've been running for a day and a night, Ding Xiaoan argued. The men are exhausted. Even if we can keep going, the horses are going to collapse. We need to rest. The enemy won't rest, I countered. We bypass the pavilion and head for the ferry terminal near Hedsong County. We'll ditch the horses and take a boat. Ding Xiaoan looked at me like I was crazy. The river is the Black Sails' territory. That's walking right into their trap. Exactly, I said. They'll never expect us to be that bold. Besides, 30 miles west of here, the mountain roads were rugged and narrow. It was far too easy to be tracked or ambushed in the heights. I told Ding Xiaoan we needed to reach the Baidu Zhou ferry. He frowned, clearly unimpressed. He had heard of the place, but to him, it was just a tiny sandbar in the middle of the river. He didn't see how it could help us. I just laughed and told him it was a great spot for fishing. He and Boss Xiong exchanged a skeptical look, but they had no better ideas. They spurred their horses and followed me. Back at Linjiang Pavilion, Pei Yunjin was watching the road. Her maid, Xiao He, hurried in with a report. I hadn't stopped at the pavilion. I had bypassed it entirely. Pei Yunjin put down her watering can, her eyes narrowing. Xiao He told her there were 11 of us in total, 10 men and 1 woman. A woman? That caught Pei Yunjin off guard. She knew the Black Sails had been kidnapping young women across the region recently. She wondered if my sudden companion was linked to that trouble. She knew me as a simple fisherman who had lived there for a year, someone who stayed out of martial arts business. Now, I was traveling with 9 killers and a mysterious lady. It didn't add up. Xiaohe mentioned we were heading toward the small ferry terminal near Hetsan County. She wondered if I was stupid enough to try and take a boat. The river was the Black Sail's backyard. But Pei Yunjin knew better. She said I looked casual but possessed a sharp, calculating mind. I wouldn't walk into a trap unless I had a plan. She ordered Xiaohe to contact Xiaoqing immediately. She wanted their people to shadow us and protect us from the shadows. She was ready to clash with the Black Sails, even if it meant risking her pavilion. Out on the Kanglan River, a massive ship with black sails led a small fleet eastward. These were the ships of the Black Sail Gang, the most notorious pirates on the water. Their leader, a man who looked strangely bloated yet skeletal, sat on a blackwood throne. His daughter, a woman dressed in tight black leather, stood by his side. She was frustrated. Every scout they sent to kill me had been slaughtered. Their strategist, a grim old man named Chao, paced the deck. He realized I was playing a game of misdirection. I had ridden horses, doubled back, and headed north, all to hide my true goal. He was certain now that I was heading east to find a powerful protector. He had reports of a tall woman with a large red birthmark on her face traveling with me. They suspected we were both masters of disguise. The leader didn't care about the mystery anymore. He ordered his entire force to hunt us down. He wanted the woman alive, but everyone else was fair game for slaughter. We finally reached the dock. It wasn't much of a port, just a small ferry crossing for locals. A few rickety boats were tied to the shore, and a dozen boatmen sat around gossiping. Ding Xiaoan stayed back, his hand on his sword. He was convinced the Black Sails would be watching a place like this. He thought I was being reckless. I ignored his warnings and hopped off my horse. I walked straight up to an old man wearing a tattered straw hat. I told him we needed to head 50 miles east. The old man squinted at us, counting our numbers on his fingers. He told me we'd need 2 boats. For a 100-mile round trip, he wanted 3 strings of coins. The price was fair. I didn't haggle. I told him we had a deal. I asked the boatman to set off immediately. I turned back and looked at Ding Xiaoan with a grin. I asked him if he could lend me some silver. Ding Xiaoan was furious. He snapped at me, calling me a brat and reminding me that I was the employer. He couldn't believe I was asking him for money. I just shrugged it off. I told him it was an old custom of the martial world and promised to pay him back double once we arrived. He still refused, but then Boss Xiong suddenly spoke up. He told Ding Xiaoan to give it to me. Ding Xiaoan was incredibly reluctant, but he eventually paid the boat fare with a pained expression. Our group of 11 people hired 2 boats and headed downstream. With the wind and current in our favor, we quickly covered more than 40 miles. I sat at the bow of the boat, looking bored. I started chatting idly with the boatman. I mentioned that there weren't many people at the ferry crossing back there, and guessed that business was usually slow. The boatman shouted orders to his rowers while giving me a polite smile. He agreed with me. He explained that most people used the Hetsan County Pier. This spot led to the eastern suburbs of Bowen County, so they mostly relied on small villages for a bit of pocket change. I pushed further. I pointed out that there were only 2 villages in those suburbs. Since business was so thin, I asked why they didn't go to the Hetsan Pier to make a living. It seemed like it would be much easier than staying here. The boatmen claimed they would have to pay heavy fees to the local gangs there, so it wasn't much better than this spot. I laughed. I asked him if that was really the reason. Then, I suddenly tapped the side of the boat with my scabbard. I asked him if they were actually waiting here specifically for me. The boatman froze. He asked me what I meant by that. I told him his rowers weren't weak at all. Every single one of them knew martial arts. I told him it was a waste for men like them to be simple boatmen. The boatman sighed. He dropped the act and asked me where they had messed up. I told him it was exactly what he said before. This place had no business. Usually, there were only 1 or 2 ferry boats here, and I happened to know the locals. Their faces were all brand new to me. The boatman smiled. He asked if that was the only reason. I told him it wasn't just that. I mentioned the guy in the woods who had released a bird. It was a bad move. There was no reason to release a messenger hawk in a place like this. Between that and a crew full of martial artists, the coincidence was just too big. Seeing he couldn't hide it anymore, the boatman took off his straw hat. He asked me why I even got on the boat if it was so obvious. I told him we actually needed a boat. Besides, if we hadn't boarded, they would have been forced to attack us at the pier even if they were short-handed. I told him I liked being considerate of others. Fighting at the pier would have been inconvenient for everyone. Now that we were all on a thief's boat, I told him he could relax. Then I told him and his men it was time to get off. The boatman looked at me. He warned me that his men were experts in the water. He asked if I was afraid they would dive down and scuttle the ship. I laughed. I told him they wouldn't. The river was too wide and the current was too fast here, making it hard to sink a boat. Besides, I knew they were just scouts. They had done their job by finding us. Their superiors were the ones I was waiting for.